I combine these two perspectives. The initial motivation for me was to understand my own experience. As most of you, Kundalini Yoga has given you amazing experiences in your life, in your meditation, in your practices, in the repetition of the Shabbats. And so I wanted to frame that in a way that could be understood not only by people like us, which for us is easy, but also for people that are not in the field of spirituality. And the way to address that was in the academy. So I ended up in Finland, short story, because I moved from Spain to Finland and I continued my research there that finally produced this that I'm showing you now. Is my doctoral thesis I call 3HO in the Light of Experience, a study of experiences in the healthy, happy and holy organization. You can read it, it's online, it's free. It's in the catalog of the University of Helsinki. My research, my study, I read everything I could read from the point of view of academy and also within the teaching, the books of Yogi Bhajan and the lectures and all that. And I came to a conclusion that there was a structural building, we can say philosophical building. And this structural building is basically consisting in three sources. And these three sources are essential to understand the whole teaching. One source is evidently yoga / tantra. And so everything that we can investigate in that field will actually make more clear that our path is really a yogic path and it has tantric elements that are really important, embedded to the core of the system. Then there was very clearly another source of this teaching, and this other source of this teaching is Sikhism. And in that respect, you can also do your research and you will see that both from the point of view of practice, everything that we practice is colored by Sikhi, colored by the Shabbats, or sometimes the culture, sometimes some notions, philosophical notions. But then there's a third element without which we cannot truly understand the teaching. And that third element is the astrological dimension. We are teachers that are preparing our world, our fellow women and men, to a world that is Aquarian. And if you research, there's a lot of references to astrology, even we are pressing some planet, symbolically and technically. Whether it's Jupiter, Saturn, the Sun, or Mercury, there is an astrological element that is all through the basic structure, philosophical structure of the teaching of Kundalini Yoga, or the teaching of Yogi Bhajan. With these three sources, we have the actual foundations, philosophical foundations of the teaching. If you would focus on one of them, you will actually lose the sense of the teaching itself. You cannot just focus on the tantric or yogic dimension, let's say, without taking into account the Sikh element or the astrological element. There is actually syncretic combination. I use that word in a non-negative or pejorative way. I use that term based on scholars that have find out that all religions actually have a syncretic origin. There's no religion, there's no, in this case, new religious movement, because 3HO is a new religious movement. There's nothing of this sort which is not combining different elements. Even if we go to one of the sources that I'm speaking, let's say Sikhi, we see that Sikhi is a combination also of different saints and different perspectives. You have 33 authors, you have Hindu authors, you have Muslim authors, and you have also Sikh authors. So the syncretic element in the teaching of Yogi Bhajan is essential. And within this syncretic combination, Sikhi, Yoga / Tantrism, and astrology are the basic ones with which we conform, we can understand the type of technique, the type of philosophy, the type of vision that we have in our community as Kundalini yogis. my thesis was basically addressing the phenomenon of this teaching from an experiential point of view. Personally, I had some experiences of Kundalini rising and some other experiences in meditation that made me feel like, wow, this is awesome. Now, from the point of view of scholarship, experiential is a very key aspect of all religions. Actually, that is the foundational aspect. Most of the greatest teachers and most of the greatest saints, gurus, avatars, messiahs, and so on have had actually an initial inner experience that revealed to them a piece of reality that was somewhat not available in books or not available to pop culture, to the culture of their time. So as they enter into a state of mystic connection, we can say, they saw something, they felt something, they understood something that was not available for the rest. And therefore, the experiential dimension, when we speak about religions, religious movement, or spiritualities in general, is a key element because it brings about the raw connection to the primal reality, if we can call it that way, the raw connection to the primal reality that is within and is actually everyone. What happens with the teaching is that it has these three elements: the Sikhi, the yogic/tantric, and also the astrological. But actually all of them, what I found out, are conceived in experiential terms. Yogi Bhajan explained all his teaching from that experiential perspective. Kundalini Yoga is something to experience the infinite self. Let me tell you one more. In Kundalini Yoga, the most important thing is your experience. It goes right into your heart. No words can replace the experience. Let's have another one. Creation needs a base, a nucleus, says Yogi Bhajan. A person with Kundalini experience provides such a nucleus. It should be understood very simply. It's not window shopping, it is not a dogma. Kundalini Yoga is not a fad, it's not a cult. It is a practice of experience of a person's own excellence, which is dormant and which is awakened. These are probably some quotes that you have heard before. Well, all of them refer how important for Kundalini Yoga is to embrace experience, to understand experience, and to learn through experience. It's a foundational element. We can say that these three sources I spoke earlier cannot actually be integrated without experiencing them. And that's one of the conclusions of my thesis. So I will tell you now from the point of view of Sikhism. He says, first the psyche of a person, he's talking about the Shabbat. First the psyche of a person consciously confronts the ideas and ideals of oneness, which the ego does not want to accept. The ideals are reinforced by verbalization, and subconscious release happens, which relaxes the entire physiology of a person. This is essentially an experience. Here, Yogi Bhajan is speaking about how it works in the experiential dimension. Then the real thing, he says, the tongue and lips, this is purely physiological experience. The tongue and lips, the most delicate, sensitive organ of the body, plays on each other in a certain permutation and combination. Now, maybe the ones that you know the least are the references that connect experience and the age of Aquarius, or astrology. He says, the age of Aquarius will be the age of experience, where only people of experience will be liked, respected, worshipped, taught, and understood. He says later, we are entering the age of Aquarius in 2012, November 11. That was one of his points where he considered the Aquarius age to begin. Then he corrected himself or changed his opinion, I don't know. It will be a new time. The entire Sikh is changing. The age you will all serve is an age of awareness, an age of experience. He repeats the same idea. This transition to the age began in Piscean age. And the Piscean age motto was, I want to know, I need to learn. The Aquarian motto is, I know, I want to experience. These are a few references to how Yogi Bhajan put together these different teachings on the foundation of experience. There is like a common ground where these different sources, astrological, Sikh, yogic, tantric, are planted together, and that soil is the soil of experience. The conclusion of my thesis, based on interviews that I conducted, was to see how the teaching and the idea of experience actually manifested in people. And you could see that the experience in people that people had helped them to, one thing, start the path. People were not so driven by the culture or the charisma even of the teacher or teachers. They were driven by the type of experiences they had. They had experiences that truly inspired them to commit to the process, to commit to an extent that even they became teachers. And the reason, and this is one of the key aspects that we have in our teaching, and it's also somehow expressing this, is that the experience works. You might have a very, let's say, good teacher or good philosophy about the teaching, but what ultimately really makes people engage is that they sit and meditate and they have a unique personal experience that makes them inclined to take steps further in this path. Experience is actually the future of this teaching. Why the experience? Because it's a language of its own. You don't need to actually convert to a certain religion, let's say Sikh, or you don't need to agree or believe in the holiness of a certain teacher or teachers. You don't need to understand Gurumukhi, you don't need to understand astrology, you don't need to understand the principles behind the Tantrism or even the yogic source. Experience is a universal language. Everyone can feel, no matter where they live, no matter whether they are men, women, or they are not defined. Nowadays we speak, they're not defined in this binary way. Even if they are old or young, everyone can experience. And so the focus of teachers in the present and the future should not be discussing, should not be theoretical, should not be even religious. A real experience through the technologies, through the Shabbats, through the pranayamas, because that is going to touch the heart of people. And that is the core of the experience. Because if it touches your mind, it might enter one ear and leave through the other ear. And in the middle, you just have the mind that reflects things and judges. But if it touches the heart, the experience is deep enough to create transformation.